We're live on Facebook. And I'm going to bring everyone in who's joining us through Zoom right now. All right. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Going to give another couple moments here for some folks to file in here through the webinar. We'll be back in just a second. All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our special session legislative update. My name is PJ Prunty. I am the president and CEO of the Greater Danbury Chamber of Commerce. I am fortunate to be joined by several state legislators who represent the Greater Danbury area with us this afternoon. We have today State Representatives Bob Godfrey, David Arconti, Ken Gucker. Has Steve joined us? Steve has joined us. Welcome, Steve. And Raheb Ali Brennan. We are also might be joined by State Senator Julie Kushner in just a few moments as well. So thank you all for taking time out of your schedules to offer some insight into the upcoming special session that we have coming up in just a few days. We look forward to hearing from you and your perspectives on some of the matters that we brought up during this session. I'd also like to take a quick moment to welcome Michael Rell. Michael is from International Governmental Strategies, who I know all of you know very well. Mike and his team at IGS, they're an additional set of eyes and ears for our chamber members up in Hartford who are working hard for our businesses. Mike, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I want to say a few words on behalf of IGS.
Great. Thank you, PJ, and thank you to the Danbury legislators for joining us this afternoon. I know this is a little bit different. You guys are probably experienced at it more than anybody else, right? With everything that is going on remotely. I'm sure you're getting trained on how to utilize this in the next 48 hours for Thursday's legislative session. We thank you guys for joining us. PJ and I talked last week, and with everything that's going on this summer, not only through the governor's executive orders, but now through outside forces that have come to full circle and to the front page on a lot of things. The legislature is going to be going back in this week, at least the House is. Senator Kushner is here. I think the Senate is going in next week, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys are in the House is going in this Thursday. Just wanted to kind of get an idea and have you guys talk about not only what's coming up this week in the special session, but what you've kind of had your fingers on for the last couple months. I know the legislative session kind of took a pause there in the beginning of March as the entire state kind of shut down. But the governor, as everybody knows, has been going, full throttle for the last 4 months with executive orders that now have, I've lost count. I think we're at triple G or triple H was the last one, executive order 7HHH. So if you do the math correctly, 26, 52 plus I think about 7 or so. So we're probably upwards around close to 60 executive orders right now. And they touch on a whole myriad of issues that I'm sure you guys have gotten calls and have received not only praise for some of them, but also some concerns about. Yeah, I'll leave it up to PJ how much he wants to kind of focus on the last couple months and where we've kind of gone to where we are now, or if you want to just get right into the the 4 major issues that are going to be coming up this week. But I'd express whatever PJ wants to do, but if anybody wants to give kind of a quick update, maybe a minute or two each legislator, that way we're not taking up too much time. That way you can kind of give a rundown of what you've been up to for the last couple months and then go right in for the session to be this week.
Sure. Yeah, that works. And for those that are joining us on the webinar, please feel free to submit any questions that you might have relevant to the 4 bills that will be taken up in special session. You could use the chat feature, which is located down at the bottom of your screen. We can hopefully get those questions answered later on in our conversation. So you know what, I think we'll just sort of dive right into it in terms of the four specific items. We'll talk about those. And from my understanding, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong on this, the four that are being discussed, the first one is the use of absentee ballots for the November election. The second, I believe, is the telemedicine, where Governor Lamont is looking to require insurance companies to continue covering costs for telehealth visits. Capping the cost of insulin in Connecticut is the third one. And fourth, last but certainly not least, the police accountability, as we are all aware that this topic really has been dominating at the forefront of the conversations really throughout the country. So with that, I'll open up to the floor for our legislators to offer some of their thoughts on these four specific items, and additionally, what you're hearing from your constituents regarding COVID-19 and the state's response and actions moving forward, and again, along with any general thoughts on the upcoming session. So with that, I'll open up to the floor as to whomever would like to sort of offer their thoughts first.
I could start. For those that don't know in the chat, and I think looking around at the chat, most do. But, my name is Steve Harding. I'm the state representative for the 107th district, which encompasses Brookfield, all of Brookfield, about a third of Bethel, the Stony Hill district of Bethel, for the most part, and Danbury, northern piece of Danbury, over by the Latins Cove area, borders Dave Arcani's area of Danbury. So I'm proud to represent all three of those towns, and I think that I probably speak for all my fellow colleagues here in saying that our role over the past 3 or 4 months has very much moved from a role of legislator or legislating policy, even though we're still doing that, obviously, but has moved much more to a role of constituent service, working with constituents in having issues with Department of Labor, getting unemployment claims, working with constituents that are having some issues with, applying for certain funds and grants. And so really that has pretty much been our and obviously also as well, just the general population, our general constituents dealing with the COVID crisis themselves in their own homes, and the executive orders and clarifications on those orders, what those orders mean for them personally or for their businesses that may own, and getting clarification from DECD, who have been fantastic during this, getting back pretty quickly to at least to my office, and I'm sure to other legislators' offices in regards to clarifications on what is included or excluded in regards to certain orders that are being issued. So that's really primarily been our role throughout this, and I think it continues to remain that role. And despite the fact that obviously the pandemic is a terrible thing, and we're all suffering through it in one way or the other, it really has brought the legislators back to the root of what we are there for, and that is working on behalf of the constituents and helping them and assisting them through the path of state government. And so that's obviously been a change in our role, and I think that I probably I speak for the constituents of all my colleagues on this call, that they have worked diligently and worked hard to keep their constituents updated and working with them on a continuous basis. But I'm looking forward to today's conversation, hearing from business leaders and some of their concerns, and importantly, going forward into the future legislative sessions, how we are going to get our state, back on our feet coming out of this pandemic. That's going to be a critical aspect of what we're going to be doing moving forward. And I really want to hear from the business leaders about what their ideas are about the best ways to go about doing that. So thanks for having me today, and looking forward to a good conversation.
I would just like to add to what Steve said, and everything you said, Steve, about the constituent services has been so incredibly important and intense for the last since March, when we all went into that mode. But there's also been a lot of policy discussions that we've been involved in. And it's funny because I've gotten a couple of people who say, well, you guys should be working year round. And in fact, we do work year round. We just don't work in the legislature year round. But particularly during this crisis, I know that in fact, it seemed like we were working even longer days because in addition to the constituent services, there were many, many meetings about the executive orders that the governor was working on. How could, they would often come off of us, or they would often come from us bringing issues forward to the governor's office saying these are items that have to be dealt with. And so, a lot of, especially in the early days, the guidance for how stores could open safely, the reopening plans, all of those executive orders were often done in consultation with legislators, and a lot of debate, not like we got our way on everything we wanted, but there was a lot of discussion between House leadership and Senate leadership and the governor's office trying to put together a safe plan to get us through this crisis. And I think, judging by what's happened in the rest of the country, I think we can look back and while I know there were times when I was more cautious than what happened with the governor's order, we can look back and say that it was done well in Connecticut. And as many people have lost their lives and suffered, and clearly we have so many people still suffering and still struggling, both economically and with the crisis as well. But when you look at us compared to the rest of the country, we know we've done a good job keeping people safe. And I hope we can continue to do that and even do it better, be more prepared for what might happen if there's a resurgence, if the pandemic, if the COVID-19 surges again in Connecticut. We can be better prepared than we were in March when we had no idea what was hitting us. So I feel like it's been an incredible learning experience. We've all learned to be experts like on unemployment. Who knew we would have to know all of the ins and outs of unemployment? I know you did a program, PJ, on PPP, which was the loan programs, which was very helpful. And we had, many of us were on all of those various discussions and panels talking about how do we make sure that small businesses are getting the loans from the federal government. I think we could do that better in the future. I'm not sure that it got to enough small businesses, and I believe we still need to make sure that our small businesses are really assisted, and that assistance needs to come from the federal government so that we don't lose the character and what makes our communities diverse and interesting because we lose the small businesses that are so critical, not just to the people who depend on them for their income, but also all of us who, that makes our community rich and interesting, and we don't want to lose that. And so there's still a lot that has to be done on that. But I do appreciate what Steve said, and I know all of my colleagues have been working so hard to make sure that we're taking care of people.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Representative Gucker?
Oh, well, I'm not sure if I can really touch more on what Steve and Julie have already put forward. But I do find that if anything that has been brought out from this pandemic is, I believe that we need to start making some more investments back into our state programs. When we go into issues with unemployment that we've all been dealing with, which, the number one concern we hear is unemployment. The second one is motor vehicle, because now as motor vehicles opening up, people are having issues with getting their licenses renewed, getting their commercial licenses renewed. Car dealerships are having issues with being able to get vehicles registered. And what this has really brought to light is that our computer systems are far outdated. I mean, when Department of Labor is still working off of COBOL, which was back when a language that we first learned about when before many of you were born, actually, in the late 70s, early 80s, was coming around. But then to find out dealing with motor vehicle that their computer screens and all are still kind of operating on like a dot matrix type platform that makes it very tough to do searches, and a lot of mechanical manual labor has to be put in. So I think what has been shown by some of this is we do need to invest back into these departments, to make them more fluid, to make them more available, and to help them really survive. Heaven forbid we have to go through this yet again. The other thing is, it has brought in this new technology that we're using today, which, yes, we're all becoming very fluid on, and we'll be, I guess, using a form of this on Thursday in the House, to where they're going to sequester us, I believe, in our offices, and then do vote calls and things from that aspect. So I think, being my first term here, and being an old Boy Scout, one of the things that I really got involved with this, it certainly wasn't for the pay. It was certainly for the idea of trying to help people. And that's always been my goal. And I think, this pandemic and this avenue has really gotten us more in touch with the people on a one-to-one basis, to really be able to talk to them, really be able to understand their concerns and issues, and really be able to help them. I think we can go further. I would like the PPP program go to a lot more small businesses, not so much some big companies that got it. I think it would have been good to maybe help some of our restaurant base and some of our smaller, say, hardware stores and smaller businesses that are having a tough time. But it is what it is. So it is a learning curve. We're all working 24/7 on this. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to at least be able to reach out to you guys and say a few words. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative Gucker. Appreciate that. Again, reminder to those that are joining us, if any questions specific to the four bills I just mentioned, feel free to submit through the chat feature. I see Jennifer from BI just did a shout out to the state legislators, thanking you all for the leadership in the state. So thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate your support of our chamber and the business community in our area. Mr. Ali Brennan, who by far has the best backdrop out of everyone. Welcome. How are things? How are things in Bethel?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a little distracting though being outside. So there's a bird that keeps screeching and there's cars driving by, but it's nice to be outside. No, I mean, I'll just add that I know before the pandemic hit, we were all working on a lot of great bills. I know, especially on the energy and environment aspect, and also in the business side. I was working to help lift the cap on R&D tax credits, and kind of all that just got put to a stop. And so it's disappointing. But I think going through this pandemic, all of us together, and just the way we've had to kind of like switch gears and how we are legislating and how we're being legislators is invaluable going forward, and how we can respond to the community. I know when this hit, I had to sit on the phone with a lot of businesses in downtown Bethel and in Danbury to kind of walk them through some of the grants or some of the proposals that were available for them, the resources. And, I don't know these, I'm not an expert on some of the stuff that's available. So we've had to learn ourselves. And I just think just being there for the community and just being open to what are the needs has been a valuable lesson for us to learn. And so, besides that, we've just really been, like they said, I'm on the phone with the Department of Labor and my constituents every day, trying to help, a lot of the workers that are out of work to get resources. And I know I've been talking to Congresswoman Hayes' office to advocate for, more resources for those who are going to be on unemployment. We know that on July 31st, the extra $600 a week is going to run out. So, people are still out of work, especially in the state of Connecticut. But I look forward to voting on, all the four bills that are coming forward. And I know how important insulin is, and capping that, and the telehealth services, and especially voting. A lot of our seniors don't want to go to the polls or are nervous. And, we don't know if there's going to be another spike in the fall. And so making sure that people can vote and, express their voice in a safe way. I'm very supportive of that and looking forward to voting on that bill. But I won't ramble anymore, but thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative Ali Brennan. Appreciate it. We'll go to Mr. Arconti now. David, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, BJ. Thanks for having us. Definitely just add to the chorus of my colleagues that, the last few months, especially, it's just been mostly constituent services, right? And, it's been also very fulfilling to be in a position, be able to help your fellow Danburyans, navigate this pandemic by helping them, navigate the PPP program, or, helping navigate DMV, making sure people can set appointments. And you know, hearing the heartbreaking stories sometimes when people reach out saying they're desperate to pay their bills, you know, buy food, etc., and they've you know been waiting for weeks for their unemployment claims to be processed. So you know, expediting them and fast tracking them, and making sure people are able to get their benefits has been fulfilling, and we're continuing to do that now. So if you know if anyone listening has you know had issues you know with DOL, feel free to reach out, and we will do our best to make sure you're able to get your benefits. And that doesn't mean we also been working on policy, you know, especially on the local level. So, you know, a few weeks ago, you may have seen the city's blueprint for purchasing a pod over at the Matrix building for the Danbury Careers Academy, a 6 through 12 grade school. So the delegation has been working on you know, a section of the school construction bill that would, you know, allow the city to make this purchase and get an 80% reimbursement for the purchase, which would save our taxpayers, you know, millions of dollars into the future. And, you know, and in my role as chair of energy and technology, you know, the cost of electricity, it was on my mind before the pandemic, and it's been especially on my mind afterwards, because once the moratoriums on that end, you know, I think people are going to be struggling to pay their utility bills. And I know I've worked with Chairwoman Gillette, who is chair of the Public Utilities Regulatory Agency, on the cost of electricity, you know, in our state, and she's put together a listening tour. I know we're making a pit stop in Danbury in the fall on that tour to hear from local residents and local businesses on, you know, energy costs on both the residential and commercial side. So I'm really looking forward to that, to, you know, hear what hear the thoughts on that from the business community are, so we can kind of put a plan together going into the next, you know, legislative session when we're back at it in January 2021.
So thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. And then we'll hear from the representative from downtown Danbury, Mr. Godfrey. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, PJ. Delighted to be here. I actually, you know, like shaved and everything just so because I knew I was going to be on TV. Being able to work in, you know, gym shorts and a t-shirt has been interesting, to say the least. And and mostly, as my colleagues have mentioned, the vast majority of my work has been on unemployment compensation issues. You're absolutely right when I think Ken mentioned we starved the Department of Labor for too many years. You know, when we shed 12,000 state employees over the last 10 years, that included the State Department of Labor. And we refused to invest in technology. So you had this crisis hit, huge amounts of loss of jobs. I think the state unemployment rate right now is at 17%. You have to go back to the Depression to find numbers like that. And they just were not capable and ready for this kind of massive need. And I hope we learned the lesson to stop starving state services. We'll see how that happens as time goes on. But it's not the only department that we've starved for technology. It's not the only department where we haven't replaced employees. And wrestling with that, I think, is going to be exactly that. It's going to be a wrestling match now and in the future. I think the other interesting, we've got the 4 bills this week. The Senate actually went in this morning and adopted rules and adjourned until next week. The House will go in on Thursday, do the same, and start debating some of these bills. And I'll tell you, what I've missed most, and I'm hoping I'm going to pick up some of this when we're all in Hartford together, even if we're kind of confined to our offices. When I'm really pressed to ask, what do? I say, well, I schmooze. I bump elbows. I have discussions. I sit in the cafeteria and talk to Mike Rell. I find out what other committees that I'm not on are up to. If I've got a request for some either information or a little advocacy on an issue, I can run into the chairs of the committee and the ranking members of the committee and have discussions with them. And you know, the last time I was in my office was March 11th. I'm looking forward to going into that, like bringing the calendar up to date and rewinding my clock on Thursday. But there are issues we're going to have to face. The courts have been closed, which means there have been no evictions in months. When the courts open, the eviction processes are going to start. Now with 17% unemployment, we have a lot of people who are going to be thrown out of their homes. Where are they going to go? They don't have a job. They're not going to be able to get another apartment. We're going to have tent cities and shacks like we did in the Great Depression. Is there going to be some kind of way to provide for housing? If so, how much is it going to cost and where's the money going to come from? These and many other issues, including things like healthcare and education, are longer term. That will take more than this week. So when we go in, we have to go in September, and we're looking toward that because the governor's emergency powers expire September 9th. And we're looking at going in and statutorily enacting a number of the things that he's done under executive order. For example, I mean, this week, there was the whole issue of workers' compensation for people who have gotten the coronavirus on the job. We're going to have to make a decision whether or not to put that in statute. So there's just going to be huge amounts of things going on, and you know, we're not in regular session until January. What's going to happen for the next 5-6 months? And I don't know. Some of the things we'll deal with this week, others that we'll deal with in September, but it's going to be a lot of work, and we're going to be handcuffed by the inability to schmooze. So thanks for doing this, by the way, PJ. It's a great addition. You know, I have a background in Chamber of Commerce work.
There you go.
Actually, I was their lobbyist back in the late 70s, early 80s.
That's right.
And this is just a great continuation of the programs you've had all these years. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that update. Speaking of lobbyists, I also wanted to take a moment to introduce Jim Amon. Jim is joining us. He's the managing partner of IGS, a former Speaker of the House for the state of Connecticut. Jim, thanks for all your help in teaming up with Mike. Welcome, and hope all is well with you.
Now, to be here, PJ, and to hear all our wonderful leaders. So nice to be here.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. So we just we'll jump into some of the questions that we received, and then we'll circle back on some of the 4 specific bills. But Helen from Newtown, she asked, what is the plan to address the people who will need to sign up for COBRA, an estimated 370,000, and the small business owners that purchase their insurance on their own who do not qualify for a reduced rate? She referenced a Hartford Courant article that projected up to 40% increases in premiums for individuals. Senator Krishna, I know that you're pretty well versed on some of the stuff, on many other details. Do you want to sort of take that one first?
I know that this is one of our biggest concerns, is how are we going to make sure that people continue to get health care? And as everyone knows, that our healthcare system is really tied to your employment and to your business. And so when in times of crisis like this, when so many people were on unemployment, they had to go onto COBRA and continue making payments to cover their healthcare. Now, I heard a lot from people who were questioning this $600 additional payment from the federal government for those that were unemployed, and felt like it was just free cash that was flowing to them. And in fact, most people had to use that money to pay for benefits that no longer were available through work, particularly healthcare. A COBRA payment, as I'm sure you all know, can be more than $600 a week, depending on the insurance plan that you have. we are really concerned about the projections that healthcare costs are going to go up through the roof next year. One of the things that I think we need to look at in special session that didn't make it to this special session, but hopefully we'll be able to take up in September, is how do we open up health plans to small businesses to make sure that they have the opportunity to get affordable, lower cost, quality health care. And that Connecticut plan was one of the bills that I know our insurance committee was working on when things came to a screeching halt. I think that's even more important today because we know that everyone really is in need of affordable health care. And we have to be prepared that we can't just sit back and think those costs are going to go up and somehow people will make do. I don't think that's the case. We're going to have to make it available. And hopefully we can address that healthcare policy issue through special session in September. PJ, I'm going to take the liberty. I saw the other question about the DOL question. If you don't mind, I can address that as well because I am chair of the Labor Committee. We've been working with DOL for a number of years. Our state is part of a consortium to build a new unemployment computerized system. And we've been part of that for 7 years. It was supposed to come online next May. Now, of course, that's been set back by this crisis, but we weren't able to go out and do many things on our own because we as a state committed to the consortium. And, you know, that was a smart thing to do because we all had the same needs and it brought down our costs to be working together to build out a brand new system. So I don't think it's going to be delayed terribly long. So we are already well into the process of developing a modern unemployment system that will be used in several other states around the country. So that's something we have been working on and will continue to work on. And we get reports from the DOL on the progress on that. It has not been completely dropped. It has taken a back seat to getting new systems set up to implement the new benefits that went into effect through the federal government.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Does anyone else want to add anything onto those initial comments? Please feel free to do so. No, she knocked it out of the park. All right. We'll take a look here at another question. This is actually back to Representative Gucker's comments about the software. To any of your knowledge, has the state begun to explore new software vendors to assist with some of the challenges that they did have?
I would say to my knowledge, I haven't heard of anything. We've had an administration and we've talked about, moving into the 21st century. At this point, we're still working in the 19th century with some of these programs. But I think that with the challenges that have come forward due to this, this pandemic, I think it's pushed more of the issue of the importance of getting up to speed and really looking at how we can, sorry, my other phone's ringing, so that we can get to the point where it'll be a more seamless thing. I mean, the governor has talked for a long time about, moving more things online, moving things more in an environment that will be more friendly to people. And I think this may be the catalyst that gets maybe some of the naysayers to realize, he's right. We need to do something.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, PJ. The Josh Dubal, the Chief Operating Officer, who's really taken a front and center leadership role on the coronavirus pandemic, pre-pandemic. The former COO, Paul Mounts, now Chief of Staff, that was a priority for him in that office, and Josh has picked up on that. And the Chief Operating Officer and his staff are working. They work with all the commissioners of all the various state agencies, and I know that's a priority going forward for every single agency, not just DOL.
DOL has, by the way, already been working on for the last couple of months a new computer system. Obviously, it takes time to not only develop but to install and then train. It takes months. The backlog in DOL is still very, very high, and they couldn't hire any people who knew how to operate COBOL. So, it was difficult. But I'm hoping the lasting lesson is that we've got to invest in the technology to provide services. I hope that's the outcome of this.
Mhm.
All right, so let's talk about some of the bills that are coming up in the special session. It seems like I'd say, and I could be wrong, 3 out of the 4 may not have a tremendous amount of sort of debate or controversy. Just from reading some of the articles leading up to the police accountability, I'm curious to see where that stands right now. Have you seen some drafts in terms of what's looking to be accomplished in the police accountability? Just please offer some thoughts on that as well.
I think Steve and I are the 2 members from our area on the Judiciary Committee. So, and we had the big public, what we're calling public hearings now, listening hearings. Last Friday, they went on for 12 hours. I was in and out of that, juggling the rest of my work. I'm aware that more negotiations have been going on over the weekend over that. While we have seen the draft that we used for the public hearing, there have been no updates yet. But I'm assuming we'll be getting them in the next couple of days. So that's the status of things.
And yeah, I'll just add to what Bob had said. We had a 12-hour listening forum. Is it? I don't know what the exact word is. Usually it's public hearings, but it's not technically a public hearing because I guess there was a timeline, and I guess for public hearings, there's not really a timeline. It's just when you're done when the last speaker speaks. So I think that's why it was labeled as a listening forum. But it was really compelling. There was a lot of very passionate, informative individuals, from private citizens, individuals that are strong advocates of reform, police officers giving their insight on the day-to-day activities as a police officer. It was very informative for all legislators. I'm assuming it's on CTN or it's archived on the CTN website for those. So for those that are interested in the bill, I certainly encourage them to. It's a 12-hour hearing, so I understand you may not be able to watch all of it, but to watch some of it, because there was many fantastic speakers who gave some really great informative information. The hope from this, I think, is that, as PJ had mentioned, there's really not much debate regarding the majority of what we're going to be handling later this week. And the hope is that, we understand, every reasonable person should understand there needs to be reforms, and it's necessary. And so the hope is that we can work together in a bipartisan fashion to create those reforms in a practical manner. And I think that's what's being done and negotiated right now between, I think, the ranking members of the Judiciary Committee and the chairs are working diligently to try to craft legislation that is practical and at the same time makes necessary reforms that are needed. So my hope is that will be accomplished and we'll be able to come together and vote on a really good bill come Thursday. And for Julie, Tuesday. I think the Senate's voting on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think we've all heard the public call to action, to address, racial bias and policing across the country and in, parts of Connecticut. I know we're very blessed to have some great departments in our area, but, and I think every single one of us have participated in rallies and heard the stories, we would never know. So we're here to listen to those voices and take that to Hartford. And, I know that everyone in this conversation, we all come from a very balanced approach, and we've been having conversations with the local chiefs to see what are their concerns and making sure that we're, approaching this from all ends and that everyone's part of the conversation. So it's been very interesting and eye-opening to hear all sides. And like we said, it's a draft bill. So I think they're kind of negotiating what's actually going to be in it for Thursday as we talk. So we'll know a little bit more probably later tonight, hopefully, and we'll go from there. But again, it's a obviously sad to have to legislate on something like this, but also it's a great opportunity for us to kind of really push Connecticut and the state forward. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'll just add that, first of all, I do want to talk about the police accountability bill, but I really think I think that we have this incredible opportunity with the insulin. It's something that was Senate Bill 1 was originally proposed to cap the cost of insulin. And, over the course of the last several months, I've learned a lot about the cost of insulin and how much it costs people, and it's a life-saving drug. And so I am really excited about the opportunity to lead the country in addressing this issue. And I think that we have a really strong bill from what I've heard about it, and that it will have wide support. I know that I saw earlier the shout out from Jennifer. I talked to her yesterday from Boehringer. And I know that, there's always concerns from different partners in this process, particularly our pharmaceutical manufacturers. And I feel like from what I've heard that people are going to be very much on the same page when it comes to this bill. So I feel like this is going to really be a huge advantage to so many people who depend on insulin just to live to live every day. And in terms of telehealth is also an incredible opportunity. We had obstacles to having telehealth, and now if we can continue, and I know that the idea around that is to extend it for another year so that we can make sure that we get it right in the legislative, the statutes right when we legislate this for next year. But the opportunity for people to get medical care either over the phone or through their, video Zooms is incredibly important to people who have a hard time getting out of the house, who have childcare issues, who have to take a whole day off of work for a 10-minute doctor's visit. Now you can do that we'll be able to do that through telehealth. And I think that experience that we saw everyone come together, whether it was the patients, the doctors, the facilities, they're all on board to making sure that that's something that continues, including our insurers are on board with it as well. So, those two bills shouldn't be, they're really essential bills and are going to be good for our state going forward. Of course, after that, it's really important that everyone has the opportunity to vote in a safe way in November, and we don't really know now what the status will be. So I think taking this forward move now and being in a position where everyone will have the opportunity to vote by absentee ballot should the COVID return in a way, or even today, most people are not standing in line now, as even while we're under, things seem like we're sort of under control right now. And I sent in my application right away. So on the police accountability bill, I agree with everything that's been said about, getting an opportunity to look at this. I have participated in the various demonstrations and events, not just all protests, but some events that have been really remarkably eye-opening to me as a white person, to not really fully understand the experience in our Black and brown communities of, what it means to have a different color skin. And for me, I consider myself someone who's been very much aware and involved in the civil rights movement my entire life. That's not enough. I have learned so much in the last 6 weeks, listening to my colleagues, listening to constituents. And so I feel like this is an opportunity for us to do something to make sure that we continue to be a good state when it comes to policing and improve where we haven't been as good. I agree with you, Representative Valerie Brennan, that we're very fortunate in this area to have some really great police force work that's been done over the years. But we know from listening to people in the community, there's still ways that we can improve, even in these great circumstances, even in the circumstances of Danbury or Bethel or Sherman and New Fairfield, there's still ways we can improve. And certainly as a state, we want to be on record that we have strong police accountability. So I feel like we're moving in a good direction there, and I'm hopeful that we'll get to a place where there's a bill we can all vote and support.
I had just a quick question on that, PJ. Coming from your municipalities, have you guys heard from your local, either local officials or local police chiefs about, I guess the biggest sticking point is the qualified immunity part, is what's holding up a lot of the support, from other police departments around the state on that. Have you guys heard anything from your local municipalities on that? Are they weighing in with calls or emails to you guys?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, go, Rob.
yeah, no, I mean, I've had that conversation with Bethel PD. I've reached out to Reading. I've had conversations with Newtown, and I've reached out to Danbury as well. And qualified immunity seems to be a piece that a lot of the police department have concerns about, and I understand that the way it's worded right now is very broad, and obviously, I think it's a very this could have big repercussions. So when we're legislating on something, we want to make sure that we know what the shortfalls could be, and as such. And I know that right now, I'm part of the Black and Puerto Rican caucus. We debate it within ourselves. I know that the Democratic caucus is debating it within themselves as well. And so that's why I said, it's still a draft right now. And I'm expecting to hear news later today on whether what's going to be happening with that and what will still be in or out. But I do hear the concerns, and we do respectfully take that in, and we've been having those conversations. So I don't want to speak, prematurely, but hoping to hear tonight if what will be in and what will be out. I do understand. I did hear that. I know there was a conversation about police at construction sites on the roads. I know that, from my understanding, has been taken out of the bill. So I know, and a lot of municipalities have been asking about that as well. So, but besides that, I mean, we're still having the conversations, and respectfully. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo Representative Ali Brennan's remarks. The public hearing was, a special hearing from all sides of this issue. I tuned in for most of those 12 hours on Friday, because that's how important this issue is. And I've spoken with Danbury Police Chief a lot, over the past week and over the weekend, along with the rank and file officers, because I think getting their perspective on this topic is also important. I'm blessed, and my father served 30 years in the Danbury Police Department. Spent most of his career as a detective. So, but picking his brain, on this bill in particular has been extremely helpful, on my end, and talking with my colleagues and members of the community about it to make sure, we get this right.
I will also echo what also has been said. And, I also have a special relationship with the police department like David does. I have, family and friends who serve today in Danbury and other areas of the state, and they've been very vocal, and we've sat down, sometimes a little heated, but I think that's what's needed to really get out what needs to be done and really crafting something that's good. I mean, the one thing that I guess has come out of all of this that we probably wouldn't have heard had this bill not come up is even many of these police officers are coming forward for the first time saying, you're right, we have some issues. We have some problems we need to deal with. There have been things that we've looked the other way. And maybe, I don't know if this is through fear of their leadership as far as how the police force is structured, that officers would be resistant to come forward and say things. But on the other aspect, I think they've also, now because this forum is open, they're not afraid to come out and say, you're right, we need, say, more training in this area. We could use more help in this other area. We going through the various parts. So though I have some concerns, I've made them clear to leadership. I await to see what's going to come out for us to actually vote and look at. But in the other aspect, it's been very good to have, Chief Rittenauer and others that I know coming forward and laying out, look, here's our concerns, here's our issues. And we are fortunate here in Danbury. Danbury is not one of the more troubling areas. They pretty much have kept some of this pretty good. But unfortunately, it's the bad actors, as we like to say, in other departments and other places in the state that have really caused this problem to exist. So again, I look forward to see what we're going to be voting on. I look forward to see if the concerns that I raised to leadership yesterday are going to be taken into effect. And I think if anything is coming out of this, it's giving the police an opportunity to finally reach out to us to tell us where they need help and assistance and where they're upset. Because I think without an open dialogue, we don't know what's really going on, because they kind of hide behind that blue line that we're all going to stick together and work together. But we're the ones that have to deal with the aftermath afterwards.
I think it's important to kind of let everybody know what we've been talking about and what the public hearing was about. So I want to take a couple of minutes just to kind of do a bullet point of what is in the draft bill, which was a negotiated draft among both parties and both houses, with an awful lot of work done by the leadership of the Judiciary Committee to put this all together. It upgrades the certification process. Currently, municipal police have to go through a certain certification process. We're up through post police officer, which is the police officer training school here in Connecticut. So we're upgrading the curriculum. We're adding that state police have to have the same certification as municipal police. That's new. We're requiring drug testing, particularly or including anabolic steroids, which change your personality and make you more violent. We're going to require mental health assessments. PTSD isn't confined to soldiers in Afghanistan. It can happen anywhere for anybody who is in a stressful situation that includes physical as well as mental stress. There'll be new training put together on crowd management. We haven't had that. There'll be new training on implicit bias training. That's new. The Freedom of Information Act will no longer be able to be contracted away. Anybody who works for government in this state, their boss are the citizens of Connecticut, and their bosses have the right to know what's going on in their own government. The bill will require new means of recruiting minority officers. It will create a transparency and accountability task force to continue the work in a longer run. It will say you can't cover your badge anymore. It will authorize municipal civilian review boards. There's a few towns that have them now. There's another bunch where their lawyer said, "Oh no, it's not permitted under state law." So it will be explicitly permitted under state law. There'll be an evaluation of the use of social workers in a lot of this training. I've gotten very upset over all of the deaths at police officer hands. But one of the ones that hit my heart was the young man barely out of his teens who was deaf and was trying to use sign language to communicate with the officer, and the officer assumed he was assaulting him, and so he shot him dead. Yeah, we need training for officers to be able to understand those kind of situations. We're going to require body cams and dashboard cams, and we're going to pay for it. We're going to prohibit consent searches. We're going to penalize false reporting and misuse of the 911 call. We're going to tweak the definition of the justified use of deadly force. We're going to require police officers and other law enforcement officials to have the duty to intervene. We're going to create the Office of Inspector General that will deal solely with complaints against police officers. We'll prohibit the ownership and use of military style equipment, and we'll also prohibit quotas for traffic stop citations and that kind of thing. Clearly, the most controversial piece is this qualified immunity. And it really shouldn't be, but I understand. under current law, if a police officer has a complaint that includes a violation of civil rights, they can bring suit in a federal court. That's not changing. We can't change federal law. And the qualified immunity law applies in federal court because it's a federal matter. All we're trying to do is create a parallel state cause of action that would be exactly the same. So you wouldn't have to go exclusively to a federal court. And there's only 3 federal trial courts in the whole state of Connecticut. But you could also bring suit in a state court, and we got plenty of those. This idea that this is an anti-police bill is wrong, and the idea that this new state law dealing with complaints against police officer is new is also wrong. It's just adapting and adopting the federal causes of action on the state level. So we'll see how the rewrites come out hopefully in the next few days, and how these are going to be dealt with. Julie was also right to talk about the other 3 bills. Actually, right now, before I tuned into this Zoom, I was watching the insurance listening hearing on both the telehealth and the insulin bills. I've had type 2 diabetes now for what, 8-9 years. I understand the need for insulin, although happily I only had to take insulin for about 3 years, and I'm controlling my blood sugar, my blood glucose in other ways currently. But for a drug that was discovered, invented, developed almost 100 years ago and sold by the inventor for $1, why are we charging $300, $400, $500 for a 1 month supply of something that should be in the public domain? The only answer to that is the abject greed of pharmaceutical companies. So we're looking to cap insulin costs at I think $25 a month, and a number of other related affordability issues. It's time we realized that healthcare isn't a privilege, it's a right, and this is a great start. Also, having regular appointments with various and sundry doctors and dentists, this whole telehealth thing, I actually experienced this. It was kind of weird. I had to actually go in to both the hospital offices and Quest for tests, blood tests and EKG and all this kind of stuff. But then when I actually met with my doctor for the follow-up, it was over a video conference on the phone. It was weird. I'm used to having a more personal discussion, but we want to make sure that that kind of telemedicine, which I think is going to be more and more the wave of the future, is covered by by health insurance. The biggies here in Connecticut, like Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, which I have already been covering it. We need to make sure every insurance policy dealing with healthcare in Connecticut covers telemedicine. And then Julie also mentioned the absentee ballot bill. The Government Administration Elections public hearing began like 4 minutes ago. All of this can be watched on CTN, can be watched on the CTN website for those who are interested. If you go to the Connecticut General Assembly website, you can still testify, and you can still both in person or in written, which we include. But we've got a lot to chew on this week. None of it is completely and totally finished right now. All of them need to be tweaked. The bachelor's degree in English part of me kind of wins at some of the legalese in some of these bills, but we're going to fix that so they're readable, understandable, and provable. And especially when we're dealing with the police accountability, and I think the future dealing with systemic racism. And remember, Connecticut is the most segregated state in the Union, is going to be a big part of all of our work for years to come. So the long journey starts out with the first step, and I think we're taking the first steps this week.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Senator Kushner, you signaled like you might want to add something to
Well,
that.
I unfortunately have to be on another Zoom call, but I did want to say, first of all, thank you, Representative Godfrey, for giving that really thorough description of the bills, and also for your commentary. I think that you're right to identify these issues and their importance and the important role they play right now, given what's happening in our country. So I really appreciate everything you said. And I wanted to answer Mike's question about whether we had heard from constituents and from police chiefs. And I think we all have. I know I've heard from a lot of constituents on both sides of the issue, very passionate pleas for us to address these issues of police accountability and systemic racism, and how do we get to racial equity in our community, which are really important issues for me. And I feel very responsible to do everything I can to advance racial justice in our community. I also have heard from mostly police officers who are concerned about the police accountability. I think there have been a lot of misunderstandings about even qualified immunity and what it means and what it would do. I know that we didn't have that before 2005 in the state of Connecticut, and we were able to attract and employ and have sufficient police resources. And so I think some of that is forgotten. I think I want to say something that was told to me by one of my colleagues yesterday after a very long discussion about qualified immunity, that I really, I'm not a lawyer. It's not something I really have any experience with, other than to know that I myself in a professional capacity had liability insurance. And a lot of people talk about how you can purchase liability insurance. But I think the comment that was made that hit me very, very hard was that if we all watched, unfortunately, most of us watched the murder of George Floyd. We saw it on all of our TV screens. And a lot of people say, well, we don't have cases like that in Connecticut. But that's really not the point. Qualified immunity, which they do have in Minnesota, probably means that even if the officer is held accountable, even if he goes to jail, qualified immunity will shield him. And I think that was kind of shocking to me. Not a non-lawyer, not somebody who can speak to this from the legal point of view. It's just that I think when we all saw that, what we wanted to do was fix that wrong. And so I hope people will keep an open mind and not be swayed by, I think, sometimes a half understanding of what the issue is. And so I know I'm going to learn more about it as we go. And as I heard from all my colleagues, we're going to look at what the final product is. But I really, PJ, I've got to jump on this other call, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you inviting us to be here today and to have this opportunity to share our views on these really important matters.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time. And speaking of time, that is all the time that we do have. We're just passing that hour time where we started. So thank you to all the state legislators that joined us today. We appreciate your time and of course, your service to our state, and those that joined us on the webinar. Appreciate your commitment to the chamber and in our community as a whole. Please feel free to reach out to me. Let me know if you need anything. We're here for you. Give me a call at the chamber office. And I mentioned to Michelle, you can give me a shout. We could chat about your question. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer that. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Just a quick little update. I just got an email from the Hartford Courant saying that the governor added 10 more states, looks like, to the travel advisory. So it's 31 now. I believe that's new information. Looks like they added back Delaware onto the list, and Maryland as well. But Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope everyone stays safe and stays healthy. Take care, everyone. Thanks.